This is the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Tuesday, June 16th. Looking at our main story, we had lots of lightning over the weekend in our southern areas. Now we have near record heat building with dryness, and there'll be some gusty winds periodically across some of these areas. The strongest winds of 30 to 40 miles an hour will end up next couple of days over southern Idaho, eastern Utah, and even tickling some of those southern Utah areas that did have some of that lightning. Got another disturbance producing the potential for lightning in northwest Nevada and southwest Idaho by Friday, along with gusty winds ahead of that week low in parts of southern Nevada and adjacent southwest Utah. And overall, fire danger will continue to increase significantly along with the building heat and drying this week. A lot of our fuels will be in the 90th to 97th percentiles by the end of the week. Now, our impacts for today, the heat builds across many areas. We have a cold front coming through the north, some pretty gusty winds of 30 to 40 miles an hour across parts of southern Utah going into western Wyoming, and 20 to 30 mile an hour winds across a good expanse of the higher terrain of central and eastern Utah, getting into the Uinta Basin. As that front drops further south on Wednesday, it'll continue the gusty winds in southern Utah and also start increasing the winds, especially on the Wasatch back going into the Uinta Basin, and some moderately breezy conditions extending further south, along with very hot, dry conditions. Should mention there'll be an isolated thunderstorm or so over the high Sierra on Wednesday, and maybe a little bit more on Thursday as a weak low pressure area approaches from the west. Also, some expanding isolated thunderstorm coverage over some of the higher peaks, but it's really going to be Friday where we see more of a widespread lightning threat. Just a few isolated lightning strikes over southwest Utah yesterday, nothing like the last couple of days, really no significant precipitation. And over the past 7 days, really not much precipitation at all in most areas. There was a little bit of a better expanse in parts of southeast Idaho, western Wyoming, and maybe the some of the higher terrain up in the central Idaho mountains, but it was mostly hit and miss. Our fire activity is picking up. A lot of it has to do with the recent lightning and holdovers that are starting. Some of those fires are getting a little larger down the Arizona Strip. Looking at our flash drought index over the last 3 months, we've been beating this one to death, but continuing to see the most extreme drought conditions over southern and even central areas, starting to get into southern Idaho as well. And for fine fuels, our 10-hour fuels are getting really dry, getting down into that 5% range across much of Utah to parts of eastern Nevada, and a lot of mid to upper single digits just north of there, covering most of our region. Our ERC percentiles also going up. Now, these reds you see here are 97th to 99th percentile. The oranges are above 90th percentile. We see that extending all the way up into parts of Idaho at this point, and across much of northwest Nevada, 80th to 90th percentiles in these open circles through here. So that's, again, a continuation of that drying trend. Now, weather-wise, do have high pressure building in from off the Pacific, but we have a strong jet stream, and this is kind of associated with a cold front. It's going to cause some breezy conditions and a bit of a temperature change. But also the tight packing of these height lines will increase the winds across parts of southern, southeastern Idaho, going into northeastern Utah. And by Thursday, we'll be watching this weak low pressure area approaching. Not much moisture with it, but low pressure tends to make the atmosphere more unstable. So you see this growing area of black. We could start seeing some isolated high base thunderstorms by this point. In terms of the high risk, with those winds coming with that cold front from the north across much of the Snake River Plain and the southern Sawtooth, also some concerns in the Uinta Basin. We also have a new added high risk. This is the burn environment. This is where maybe we don't have critical winds, but we have breezy conditions of maybe 20, 25 miles an hour, very dry fuels, lightning ignitions recently in holdovers, and very low humidity. So there's an added elevated threat where we have this burn environment with a B, high risk in some of these southern areas. But we also are highlighting the winds as well as we get a bit further north into Utah and into parts of Idaho as well. And then on Thursday, no high risk, but you see a lot of moderate risk across many areas. And overall, the winds, you can see how gusty they are up in Idaho. On Tuesday, and even dropping down along the higher chain of the Utah mountains, we continue to see that wind threat in eastern Utah and southern Idaho on Wednesday, and the winds diminish a bit on Thursday. Humidity bone dry through the period. Also, noticing those temperatures, that's also part of that burn environment. We see temperatures maybe 8, 10, 12 degrees above normal. 100-degree highs forecast for Reno. A little bit cooler, but still about 8 degrees above normal up in parts of Utah, 92 in Salt Lake, 96 degrees in Boise. And again, similar story on Wednesday, maybe just a degree or two off in some spots. Not much precipitation, but we do see some developing convection across the high Sierra on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we start seeing some isolated storms possibly across the higher terrain of central Nevada and southern Utah by Thursday. Now on Friday, we have this little low pressure area dropping out from the north and a weak low off the Pacific. They're combining to make the atmosphere more unstable. Now we see these little lines of green here. This is where we'll have a bit more better coverage of thunderstorms. Not much moisture with them, so we do have high risk for lightning here in the red across parts of southern Idaho, southwest Idaho and northwest Nevada. Also, we're going to see winds increasing with this low through here, so we have high risk for wind as well, just south of that area on Friday. The low passes off on Saturday and Sunday. We get into a more of a zonal, seasonably warm and dry flow continuing through Sunday. Fuels will be drying out in a lot of areas by then. We see the low humidities continue. A bit of a rise in humidity Friday and Saturday, just by a notch with some of those isolated storms, but not much. See those winds over parts of Nevada and Utah during that period, but they'll start slackening off as you go into Sunday. And there's our lightning threat here on Friday. Not much precipitation. There'll be some, a couple of hundredths, maybe some isolated tenth of an inch amount. So a mix of wet and dry, but enough lightning where we are concerned about more ignitions and fire activity, and that could linger into Saturday before it starts moving east on Sunday. So summing things up, going to be an active week. We have a high risk for both winds in northern and central areas, and then for burn environment for breezy, record heat conditions and dryness of fuels and some new fire starts in the south Tuesday and Wednesday. And then our next day to watch out will be Friday with the high risk for lightning over some of our western areas and some breezy winds in areas where there was some lightning activity recently here in southern Nevada and Utah. And then we do kind of stay status quo, seasonally warm and dry through the period. And then a 6 to 10 day outlook showing above normal temperatures and drier than normal conditions for most areas. Concludes our briefing. Have a great day.